Start with the sound, because the sound is the only thing I'm sure of. Not the words. The words came after, or I built the words after. I can't always tell anymore which memories I lived and which I assembled later to make the living bearable. But the sound, there was a sound in the corridor before there were any words, a small sound, high, the kind a child makes when she's trying not to make a sound, and that I'm sure of, that one I'd swear to in front of any court or any god. The trying not to. You can hear the trying. It's worse than a scream. A scream means the worst hasn't happened yet. A scream is a child still expecting rescue. The other sound, the small pressed down one, that's a child who stopped expecting and is only trying not to make it worse. I heard that sound. Everything else in this account you can doubt with me, not that. I've started this a dozen ways and thrown them all in the fire. I keep wanting to tell it in order and my mind won't give me order. It gives me the corridor, then the kennels from when I was a boy, then the corridor again from a different angle, then my mother's hands, then the corridor. So I've stopped fighting it. I'll give it to you the way it comes to me, in pieces, out of sequence, the way it actually lives in my head, and you'll have to assemble it the way I've had to, and maybe by the end we'll both know what happened. I half hope we don't. The not knowing has been my home for a long time now, and I'm not sure I'd survive being evicted from it into certainty. My name is Halden Roe. I was a guard of the household, the inner household, the part of the palace where the family actually lives, not the throne room part the visitors see. I want to say that clearly because people hear royal guard and think of the tall men at the gates in the bright coats, the ones who don't move. I wasn't that. I was the other kind, the kind you don't notice, posted in the residential corridors where the children run and the old women doze and nothing is ever supposed to happen. Nothing ever did happen. For 11 years nothing happened, which is the whole tragedy of it, because 11 years of nothing teaches a man's ear to relax, and a relaxed ear is a slow ear. And on the one day something happened, my ear was 11 years relaxed. Princess Elise was 6. I keep wanting to say more about her and finding I can't hold her still in my mind either. She comes to me in pieces, same as the corridor, the gap in her teeth, the way she ran with her arms out like wings, a thing she said once that I'll get to. 6. Hold the 6. Whatever else slips, hold that she was 6. Here is the corridor. I'll try to give it to you whole, and I already know I'll fail, but here. The west residential corridor, late afternoon, the hour when the light comes in long and gold through the tall windows on the garden side and lies across the floor in stripes, and the dust hangs in it, and the whole place goes quiet and warm and sleepy. The children napped or were meant to. The old dowager, Lady Marin, had her rooms at the far end. I was posted at the near end by the stair, where I'd been posted 1,000 afternoons, leaning. I'll admit the leaning, it's part of the confession, leaning on the cold wall with my eyes half shut, listening to nothing, which after 11 years is a thing you can do. Listen to nothing and trust the nothing. And the nothing broke. I've gone over how it broke 10,000 times and I get it differently each time, which is the thing I most need you to understand about me before you trust anything I say. My memory edits itself. I'll remember the small pressed sound first, then next time I'll remember a particular door clicking shut down the corridor first, then the sound. Which came first, the door or the sound? It matters. God, it matters, because if the door came first then I heard something and waited, even half a breath I waited, and if I waited then no. I can't follow that one all the way down today. Some days I can, not today. The point is my own mind won't tell me the order, and a man who can't trust the order of his own memories is a poor witness to the most important thing he ever did. That's what I am. The only witness, and a poor one, and the poorness is the wound. I should say, before I go further, why I'm writing this at all, since I've claimed it's for no one, and that's not entirely honest. I'm writing it because the household keeps a record, and the record is wrong. Not wrong in the facts in the record are right enough. A guard responded to a disturbance in the west corridor and prevented harm to the princess, commended, retired. Wrong in the way all such records are wrong, by being clean, by being a straight line. The record makes it sound like a man who knew what he was doing and did it, start to finish, decision and execution, the way the songs and the reports always sound. And the truth is a man who didn't know, who still doesn't know, who was run by a wiring older than his thinking and got lucky and burned out, and has spent the years since unable to be sure of the one thing he's surest of. The record can't hold that. Records hold lines. Minds like mine hold pieces. And I've decided the pieces are truer than the line, even though the line is the one that gets kept, framed, believed. So I'm setting the pieces down not to replace the record can stand, let the household have its clean line, but so that somewhere once the true shape existed on paper. The fragments, the doubt, the gold light and the drowsy smell and the sound before the words. The line is the lie everyone agrees to. This is the mess that actually happened. Both should exist. The line already does. Now this does too. The kennels. I have to let the kennels in because they keep coming, and if I damn them they flood worse. When I was a boy, before any of this, my father kept the hunting dogs for a lord, not a grand lord, a country one, but he had his hounds and my father kept them and I grew up among them. And there was a sound the dogs made, the bitches, when a pup was in trouble, when one had got itself stuck or hurt away out of sight, a particular sound, not a bark lower, a sound that went straight past your thinking and pulled you up off the ground before you decided to move. You didn't hear it and then decide to go. You were already going. The sound bypassed the part of you that decides. My father used to say a good kennelman is made in the ear, not the head, that you can't train a man to run toward trouble. You can only find the ones whose ears are already wired to their legs without the head in between, and keep them. I had that wiring. That's why they took me for the household guard, I think, though no one ever said it. Some test, some moment in training where I moved before I thought and someone marked it down. Halden Roe, ear wired to legs, good for corridors where children are. I tell you this because when people ask me, the few who know to ask, why I charged, why I went down that corridor the way I went, drawing as I went, before I could possibly have known what I was charging into, the honest answer is that I didn't charge. Charging is a decision. I didn't decide. The sound came and I was already moving. The boy in the kennels was already moving. 11 years of relaxed ear fell off me in an instant because underneath it the old wiring was still there, ear to legs, no head between. People want it to be brave. It wasn't brave. Brave is when the head's involved and overrules the fear. There was no head. There was a sound a child made and a body that was already running before I knew my own name. If that's not bravery, then I've never been brave. I've only been wired. And the wiring did the thing the brave man gets the credit for. The words, all right. I'll try the words, though the words are where I trust myself least. As I came down the corridor, and it's long, that corridor, it's a terrible length when you're running it and a child is making that sound somewhere in it. As I came, I heard her voice. Elise's voice. Small, pressed, the trying not to voice given words at last, and what the words were, what I have carried for years as the words is, please stop. That's it. Please stop. 2 words, a child's 2 words, and a name before them that I'm not going to keep writing because the name belongs to someone, and the someone is dead now, and I've done enough to the dead without dragging the name through this too. A name, and then please stop. But here's the rot in it, the rot I live in. Did I hear please stop? Or did I hear the sound and assemble please stop out of the sound afterward, because please stop is what makes my charging make sense. Memory is a liar that wants you comfortable. It is entirely capable of writing the words that justify the deed after the deed and presenting them to you as the cause. I have lain awake whole nights unable to be sure whether the words caused the charge or the charge caused the words, whether I heard please stop and ran, or ran and then needed there to have been a please stop, so badly that my mind supplied it, clear as a bell, unfalsifiable mind forever. This is what a fragmented mind does to a man. It takes the one moment he most needs to be solid ground and turns it to water under his feet. I did a thing in that corridor. I'm sure I did a thing. I'm just not sure some days whether the thing was righteous or whether I've spent years dressing a terrible mistake in a child's borrowed words. My mother's hands. They come here, always here, right after the words, and I've stopped asking why and just let them. My mother had rough hands, a working woman's hands, and when I was small and frightened of the dark, she put one of those rough hands flat on my chest, not stroking, just resting, the weight of it, and say nothing, and the weight would push the fear down flat under it until I could sleep. No words, just the weight of a hand saying I am here and the dark is not getting past me. I learned everything I know about guarding from that hand, not from the training yard, from my mother's hand on my chest in the dark, the whole of it, the entire art, that to guard someone is to be a weight between them and the dark, silent, sure, asking nothing. I think when I run that corridor in my memory and my mother's hands come, it's because some part of me is checking. Was I that hand? When I went down the corridor toward the child making the sound, was I the weight between her and the dark, the way my mother was for me? Or was I the dark, come down the corridor fast and armed and certain, another frightening thing in an afternoon already full of frightening things? A 6-year-old doesn't always know the difference, in the moment, between the danger and the rescue. They both come fast, they both come loud. I've wondered whether for one instant before she understood I was just one more terror bearing down on her, and whether that instant is a thing I did to her even in the saving of her. You can save someone and still be, for one instant, a horror to them. I don't know if I was. I can't ask her. That's getting ahead. Let me go back to pieces. The hands were a piece. I've set the hands down. Lady Marin, the Dowager. I've been circling her and I have to land, even though landing on her is the hardest of all of it. She was the late king's widow, his second wife, married late, no children of her own, a step-grandmother to little Elise by a marriage everyone had mostly forgotten the politics of. She was old by the time I knew her, and frail, or seemed frail, and kept to her rooms at the far end of the west corridor with her women and her little fire even in summer because the cold got into her bones. I'd guarded that corridor 11 years, and in all that time she was a soft shape at the end of it, a doze, a shawl, a small voice asking a maid for more coal. Nothing. Part of the nothing I'd learned to trust. That's the thing I can't get past, even now, even knowing what I know. She was part of the nothing. For 11 years she was scenery, harmless scenery, the dozing old woman at the end of the hall, and you do not, your 11 years relaxed ear does not flag the dozing old woman as the danger. The danger comes from outside, from the stranger, the intruder, the assassin over the wall. The whole shape of a guard's fear points outward, toward the gate, toward the new face. It does not point at the soft old shape that's been part of the furniture since before you came. I had built my entire vigilance around threats coming in. I had no vigilance at all for a threat that had been sitting at the end of my corridor the whole time, dozing, asking for coal. I'm not going to write plainly what was happening in that corridor when I came down it, partly because I'm still, even now, not whole in my mind about all of it, and I won't set down as fact a thing my own memory keeps editing. And partly because the child is alive and grown now, and it is hers, what happened to her, hers to tell or keep, not mine to spread across a page for strangers. But I'll say this much, the shape of it, because you need the shape or none of the rest means anything. The danger to Princess Elise that afternoon was not at the gate. It was not over the wall. It was at the end of my own corridor, in the soft shape I'd filed under nothing, and it had been building in the quiet for longer than anyone knew, in the slow way the worst things build, behind a door, behind a dozing old woman's frailty that was not entirely what it seemed. The frailty was real, and it was also a kind of cover, the way Reynolds' easy laugh was a cover in another story I once heard, the way the most dangerous things wear the most harmless faces precisely because harmless faces are the ones we stop watching. Out of order now, the after. It comes here, it insists on coming here, even though it belongs at the end, because my mind keeps the after right up against the Dowager, the two of them welded together, cause and consequence touching. After, the corridor full of people. That's the after I get first. The strange wrongness of a corridor that has been empty and quiet for 11 years, suddenly full of running people, shouting, the captain, the physicians, the child's mother, all of them pouring into a space that had only ever held gold light and dust in me. It was the fullness that told me something enormous had happened, more than any single thing I saw. The corridor wasn't supposed to hold people. People in the corridor meant the world had cracked. And me standing in the middle of it with my blade out and my chest heaving and not, for a long moment, understanding what I'd done or whether it was right, looking down at no. Not yet. I can't give you the center of it yet. My mind won't open that door on command. It opens it when it wants to, usually at 3 in the morning, never when I'm braced for it. I can give you the edges, the fullness, the shouting, the child's mother's face, which I'll carry forever, the particular way a mother's face comes apart when she sees her child has been in danger she didn't know about, the guilt and terror and love all detonating at once. I gave her that face. By saving the child, I also showed the mother a thing about her own house she could never unsee, that the danger had been inside, at the end of a familiar corridor, the whole time. The mother thanked me later, wept and thanked me, and under the thanks I could see the other thing, the thing she'd never say. You are also the man who proved my child was never safe even here. The bringer of the bad news is never fully forgiven, even when he's also the rescuer. Especially then. The blade. I have to deal with the blade because it's the part people fix on when they hear any version of this, and it's the part I'm least able to hold steady. I drew. Running down the corridor I drew, the ear-to-legs wiring drawing the blade as part of the same motion as the running, no decision in it. And I have wondered every day since whether I should have. A blade is a terrible thing to bring into a space with a 6-year-old in it. A blade doesn't know who the child is. A blade is a fast, irreversible argument, and there are no second drafts of it. I brought a drawn blade at a dead run into a confused golden corridor with a child somewhere in it, and an old woman and not enough information. And the only reason this isn't a story about a guard who killed a child by mistake in his certainty is luck or grace, or the wiring being better than I deserve. Because the wiring that drew the blade also, somehow, knew where not to put it, threaded the one needle that mattered, and I cannot take credit for that threading because I don't remember doing it. It wasn't me, it was the boy in the kennels, the ear, the legs, the part with no head. That's the thing that frightens me most looking back, not that I might have been wrong about the thread. I wasn't wrong, I know that now, I'll get to how I know. What frightens me is how close the right thing and the catastrophe ran to each other, the same drawn blade, the same running man, and only the thinnest thread of something I can't even claim as my own choosing between saving her and being the worst thing that ever happened in that house. We praise the men who run toward trouble. We don't talk about how the same wiring that makes a man run toward a child in danger could, on a different afternoon, with the pieces arranged a hair differently, make him run a child down. The hero and the horror are the same man with the same wiring and only luck between them. I've never been able to enjoy being called the one without feeling the breath of the other on my neck. A thing Elise said once before any of it that I promised I'd get to. It was an ordinary afternoon, months before, the gold light, the dust, the nothing. She was supposed to be napping and wasn't. She'd slipped out and found me at my post by the stair, and she did the thing children do with the furniture guard sometimes, decided to talk to me as if I were a person and not a fixture. And she asked me, out of nowhere, the way they do, whether I ever got scared, standing in the corridor all day. And I said no, which was the answer you give a child, which was also true by then. 11 years had made it true. And she looked at me with that gap-toothed seriousness and she said, I get scared sometimes. And I, fool, fixture, 11 years relaxed, I said the thing you say. I said there's nothing to be scared of here. This is the safest place in the kingdom, I'm right here. And she looked at me a moment longer with a look I didn't understand then and have understood too well since, a look that was deciding whether to say more, and then deciding not to, and she went back to her nap. She was already frightened. Months before, she'd come to the furniture guard and put out a small toe to test whether I was a person she could tell a thing to, and I'd given her the fixture's answer, nothing to be scared of, I'm right here, and I'd closed the little door she'd cracked open. She never tried again. Why would she? She'd learned the same thing I once learned at the end of the kennels, that the grown world gives you the smooth answer and goes back to its does, and that some fears you carry alone, because the people meant to hold them won't even hear them. I had a chance, months early, to be my mother's hand on a frightened child's chest, and I gave her a fixture's line instead, and I have to live with the arithmetic that says, if I'd heard her that afternoon, if I'd knelt down and asked what scared her and actually listened, the whole corridor might never have happened. The charge, the blade, the luck-threaded needle, none of it needed, if I'd just heard the small fear when it came to me quietly in the gold light, months before it came as a scream. That's the piece that does the most damage of all the pieces, not the doubt about what I heard, the certainty about what I didn't hear months before, when hearing it would have cost me nothing and saved everyone everything. The fragments below I wrote on different nights, out of order, and I've left them where they fell. A mind like mine doesn't file things, it drops them where it stands. The training yard, this comes some nights and I let it. They didn't teach me to run toward the sound. I told you that already, but I want to say the other half. What they taught me in the yard was to wait. Hold the post. Don't leave your station for a noise. A noise could be a draw, a feint, a thing meant to pull you off your ground so the real blow lands where you used to stand. A guard who runs at every sound is a guard who can be moved, and a guard who can be moved is a door. Hold your ground. Make them come to you. That was the doctrine, and it's good doctrine. It's kept palaces standing for centuries, and it is the exact opposite of the wiring in my ear, and I have wondered which one I actually obeyed in the corridor. Did I hold and only break when the sound proved real? Or did I run at the first noise like the bad guard they warned us about, and get lucky that it wasn't a feint? The doctrine says I did wrong even though I did right. The doctrine would have had me hold my ground by the stair while the sound came from the dowager's end, hold and verify and report, and by the time the holding and verifying was done, the child would have been no. The doctrine is wrong. I've decided the doctrine is wrong, at least for corridors with children in them. But I was trained in it, and some nights it stands over me in the yard with its arms crossed and tells me I broke, I abandoned my post, I got lucky, and a man who gets lucky once will trust the luck and get a kingdom killed the next time. I have no answer for the doctrine. It isn't wrong about the next time. It's only wrong about this time. And you don't get to know in the moment which time you're in. A false one. I include it because you should see how the editing works, watch it happen. For about a year, my mind gave me a version where I saw it coming. Where in the days before I'd noticed something, the dowager's women looking away too fast, a sound from that end of the corridor at the wrong hour, the child going quiet near those rooms, small signs, and I'd filed them half seen, and on the gold afternoon when the sound came I wasn't surprised, I was confirmed, I'd known. For a year I half believed that version, and it was almost a comfort, because in that version I'm not a relaxed fool who missed everything. I'm a watchman who'd sensed the wrongness and was only waiting for proof. It's a lie. I caught it being a lie because the details kept improving. Each time I remembered it, I'd noticed one more sign, the signs multiplying the way invented things multiply while true things stay fixed. True memories don't get richer with retelling, they get poorer, they wear down. Only the lies grow. I watched that version grow and I knew it for an invention, my guilt building me a better self to have been, a watchman instead of a fixture, and I burned it. I made myself burn it. I did not see it coming. I noticed nothing. I was scenery guarding scenery, and the only thing that saved the child was a sound and a wiring I can't take moral credit for. That's the true version, the poor, thin, unimproving one, and I hold to it precisely because it doesn't flatter me. The flattering memories are the ones to distrust. I've made that a rule. Anything my mind offers me that makes me better than a relaxed fool, I check it for growth, and if it's growing, I burn it. The captain. The inquiry that wasn't. There was no formal inquiry like there'd be for a stranger over the wall, because the danger had been inside, family adjacent, and the family does not hold public inquiries into its own rot. It was handled in the quiet. But the captain came to me after, alone, and that was its own kind of inquiry, the realist kind. He was a hard old man, the captain, harder than me, 30 years in and not given to feeling out loud. He came to where I was sitting because my legs had stopped holding me by then, the wiring spent, the shaking come, and he stood over me a while and didn't say the things you'd expect. Didn't say well done. Didn't say good work. He looked at me a long time and then he said one thing quiet, and it's the truest thing anyone said to me about the whole of it. He said, "Now you'll never stand a post again without hearing that sound in every silence." And I said something stupid. I said I'd be fine, give me a few days. And he shook his head, not unkindly, the way you shake your head at a young man who doesn't yet know the size of the thing that's happened to him. He'd seen it before, you understand. He knew what spending your wiring in one corridor does to a man. He wasn't warning me. He was grieving me in advance, the way you grieve someone who's still alive but you can already see is finished at the thing they were. He was right. I never stood a clean post again. Every silence had the sound in it. He knew before I did. That's what 30 years buys you, the ability to see a man's finish from across the room, while the man still thinks he's only tired. The dowager again, the slow thing. I keep coming back because I keep needing to understand how I missed it, as if understanding the missing could unmiss it. It built slow. That's what I've pieced together, partly from after, partly from the kind of knowing you assemble in hindsight. It didn't start as the thing it became. These things rarely announce themselves. They creep, a degree at a time, each degree small enough to explain away, until you're somewhere you'd never have walked to in a single step. The frailty came first and was real. She was old, she was failing, she kept to her rooms. And the keeping to her rooms, which was real frailty, became cover for the other thing the way a true fact always makes the best cover for a false intention. Who questions an old woman keeping to her rooms? Who watches the door of a frail dozing widow? Not the guard at the other end of the hall. Not me. I'd built my whole vigilance pointing outward, and she built her whole terrible slow thing in the one blind spot every outward-facing guard has, the harmless familiar shape that's been there longer than he has. I don't hate her. I've tried. It would be cleaner to hate her, a clean hot hate, the villain of the corridor, and be done. But my mind won't give me clean hate any more than it'll give me clean memory. What it gives me instead is the worst thing, the understanding, that she was also underneath, a person who'd become something, who hadn't started as it, who'd crept degree by degree into the dark while a guard dozed at the end of her hall, and that somewhere back along that creep, there might have been a degree where someone noticing, someone kneeling down and listening, might have stopped her becoming it. Same as someone might have stopped the child's fear by listening to it in the gold light. The whole tragedy on both ends of the corridor is a tragedy of unlistened quiet. Her becoming and the child's fear both built in a silence I was posted in the middle of and trained to trust. I trusted the silence. The silence was where everything was happening. That's the lesson of the corridor, and it's no use to me now, decades late. The silence is not the absence of the thing. The silence is the thing building. My mother once more, and then I'll let her rest. My mother died before any of this. I want that down because some nights I'm glad of it, glad she didn't live to hear what her son's corridor held, and other nights I'd give anything for one more of her hands flat on my chest in the dark, pushing the fear down under its weight, because the fear I carry now is the kind only that hand ever worked on, and the hand is gone, and I've never found another that does what hers did. I became the hand in the corridor for one child for one instant, and I think that's the only time in my whole life I successfully passed the thing forward, the thing my mother gave me, the weight between you and the dark. One time. To one child. And then the hand that was me burned out and there's been no more of it to give. And I sit by my fire some nights and put my own hand flat on my own chest, which doesn't work. You can't be your own mother. The weight has to come from outside to push the fear down. That's the whole secret of it. It has to be someone else's weight. I learned everything about guarding from her hand, and the last thing I learned, too late to use, is that the guard himself has no one guarding him. The hand on the chest only ever goes one direction. You give it. No one's posted at the end of your corridor. You doze and build your dark and hope a sound and a wiring save you. And they don't, because you're not a child anymore and no one's wired to run toward an old man's silence. A piece about doors. Because the corridor was about a door in the end, and I've become a man who can't stop thinking about doors. A guard's whole life is doors. Which ones open, which ones hold, which side of them you stand on. I'd spent 11 years thinking my job was the doors to the outside, the gate, the wall, the windows, the ways a stranger gets in. I'd never once in 11 years truly looked at the door to the dowager's rooms as a door that mattered, because it was an inside door, a familiar door, a door that had always just been there, opening and closing on an old woman and her coal and her women. The threat I was trained for came through outside doors, and the threat that came through an inside one, a door I'd stopped seeing as a door at all, the way you stop seeing the doors in your own house. That's the thing I'd tell a young guard now if any young guard would listen to a burned-out old fixture by a fire. I'd say, the doors you've stopped seeing are the dangerous ones, not the gate. You watch the gate, everyone watches the gate. The gate is safe precisely because it's watched. It's the door at the end of your own corridor, the one that's been part of the furniture since before you came, the one you'd swear opens on nothing, that's the one. Look at the doors you've decided are nothing. The nothing is where it builds. I learned it one door too late and it cost me everything I had to learn it, and I can't even pass the lesson on, because who takes door lessons from a shaking old man? And anyway, you can't teach this. It's like the wiring, you can't train a man to fear the familiar door. He has to have a corridor of his own first, and I wouldn't wish a corridor on anyone, not to make them wise, not for anything. A piece about the gap in her teeth, the smallest piece, the one that undoes me fastest. Elise had a gap where she'd lost a milk tooth, and she used to show it to me, push her tongue through it, proud of it the way children are proud of the evidence that they're growing, that they're becoming. And I think about that gap more than almost anything because it's the most ordinary thing, the most alive thing, a child proud of a lost tooth, and it sits in my memory right up against the corridor like a flower growing out of a wound. She was a whole person. That's what the gap means to me now. Not a princess, not a post, not a duty, not the thing I'm proud or guilty of saving. A whole entire small person who was proud of her lost tooth and ran with her arms out like wings and got frightened sometimes, and once tried to tell the furniture guard about it. All of that was in the corridor with us. All of that was what the dark was reaching for and what I got between the dark and, not the princess, her. The gap-toothed wing-armed whole of her. When I let myself remember that it was her and not a duty, that's when I can't go on. That's when I have to set the pen down because the size of what was almost lost, the entire person of her, is more than a mind like mine can hold without coming apart. So I mostly don't let myself. I say the child, the princess, I keep it at the distance of titles. But the truth, the thing under the titles, is a gap in a little girl's teeth, and that I got between it and the dark, and that her lost tooth grin still exists somewhere in a grown woman's earliest memories because a wiring older than my thinking ran me down a corridor in time. The gap is alive. I keep the gap. Of all the pieces when the dark gets bad, the gap is the one I hold up against it. She lived. The grin lived. The wings lived. Whatever I am, whatever I failed at, the gap in her teeth grew into a grown woman's smile, and it's out there in the world right now. And I had a hand, the hand, my mother's hand, passed through me in that. That's enough. On the nights it has to be, that's enough. How I know I was right. Because I have to give you that, finally. I've made you doubt with me this whole way, and it would be a cruelty to leave you there, in the water, the way I've had to live in it. The pieces did assemble in the end, not by my own memory, which I've told you not to trust, by the other thing, the thing outside my head. In the days after, there was an examination, quiet, the way the family keeps such things quiet. And what they found, the physicians and the women who tended the child, confirmed the shape I'd feared and not been able to hold steady. The danger had been real. It had been building, behind that door, in that frailty that was also cover, for longer than the afternoon. It was not a thing I assembled to justify a charge. It was a thing that had been happening to a 6-year-old in the quiet at the end of my corridor, and the small press sound was exactly what I'd feared it was, and the please stop. Whether I heard it true in the moment or assembled it after, and I'll never know which, the please stop was accurate. It described the real thing. My mind may have edited the audio. It did not invent the event. The event was real. I came down the corridor in time. A few minutes later, and it would have been a different examination, a different account, a worse one. I was right. The wiring was right. The boy in the kennels was right to be already running. I want to tell you that knowing this fixed me. It didn't. That's the thing nobody warns you about being right. I'd braced my whole soul for years on the question, was I right? As if rightness were the thing that would let me set the weight down. And then the answer came back, yes, you were right. You saved her. And I waited to feel the weight lift, and it didn't lift. It just changed shape. Because being right doesn't give you back the months you didn't listen. Being right doesn't unmake the instant you might have been a horror to her before you were a rescue. Being right doesn't tell you whether you heard the words or wrote them. Being right is so much smaller than I'd needed it to be. I'd thought it was the whole question, and it turned out to be one small piece, vindicated and set in its place, while all the other pieces, the not listening, the luck-threaded blade, the mother's detonated face, stayed exactly as heavy as before. You can be completely right and not 1 ounce lighter for it. No one tells you that. I'm telling you. The center of it. The door my mind opens at 3 in the morning. I'll try to open it now, on purpose, once, and then close it and not open it again in this account, because some things should be looked at exactly once and then let be. When I came down the corridor, the long, terrible length of it, at the far end the door to the dowager's rooms was open, or came open, and in the gold light there was the child, and there was the old woman, and there was the thing happening that I'd filed under nothing for 11 years. Happening, real. And I came into the middle of it with the blade and the heaving chest and the boy in the kennels running my body, and I put myself between. That's the center. That's all the center is, in the end, under all the doubt and all the pieces. I put myself between the child and the thing. My mother's hand flat on the chest. I am here, and the dark is not getting past me. I became that finally, 11 years too relaxed and months too late and a drawn blade too dangerous, but I became it. I got my body into the space between Elise and the dark did not get past me. Whatever else is true or edited or lost, that's true. I got between. The wiring got me between. She looked at me. That's the part at the very center, the smallest, hardest seed of it. In the instant after I got between, the child looked at me, and I have spent years trying to read that look, and I think it was not the look of a child seeing one more terror. I think she knew me. I think even in that, even with the blade and the noise and the horror of the afternoon, she saw the furniture guard from the stair, the one she'd once tried to tell she was frightened, and some part of her understood that the fixture had finally become the hand on the chest. I think she was, in that instant, not more frightened but less. I think. I can't be sure. I'm not sure of anything. I've told you that I'm the poorest witness to my own life. But that look is the one piece my editing mind has never once tried to make worse, only ever better or left alone, and I've decided, chosen, it's a choice, not a knowing. I've chosen to trust the one piece my guilt has never sharpened against me. She knew me. She was less frightened. The hand got there in time. Closed the door now. Closed. The years after. I'll give them in pieces because they came in pieces, the way emptied years do. The first year I drank. I'll set that down plainly and not dress it. The sound was in every silence, the captain was right, and drink was the one thing that turned the sound down to where I could sleep. It also turned down everything else, which is the bargain drink offers and never keeps. It doesn't quiet the one thing, it quiets all things, and you wake up having quieted the good with the bad and a day gone you can't account for. I climbed out of it eventually, mostly, not all the way you climb mostly out of cold water but never get fully warm again. I climbed out because of a stupid small thing, the kind of stupid small thing that turns out to be the hinge. I caught my own hand shaking too hard to hold a cup, and I thought this hand was the hand on the chest. This hand got between a child and the dark, and look at it now, and I couldn't stand to have ruined that particular hand. Vanity, maybe, or the last loyalty I had left, loyalty to the one good thing the hand had done. I climbed out for the hand's sake, not my own. I didn't think I was worth climbing out for. The hand was. The corridor comes back as smell sometimes, not picture. That surprised me. I expected the pictures. I didn't expect that a certain quality of warm afternoon light through a dusty window, and the smell that goes with it, sun-warmed stone and old wood and dust, a particular drowsy smell would put me straight back. Knees gone, heart up, hand drifting to a hilt that isn't there anymore. It's not the dramatic things that bring it. It's the gold light and the drowsy smell, the texture of the nothing, the exact sensory weather of all those 11 relaxed years. Because that's what my body learned to fear, in the end, not the danger. The danger was over in a corridor's length. What my body learned to fear was the calm. The warm gold drowsy calm that I'd trusted, that had been a lie, that had had the worst thing in the kingdom building inside it the whole time. So now the calm is what frightens me. Peace is the alarm. A quiet golden afternoon is the most dangerous feeling thing I know. I got it exactly backwards from how a person's supposed to be, and I can't get it right way round again, and that, more than any picture, is how I know I'm broken. When peace itself has become the threat, there's no posture left that's safe to stand in. A fragment I'm not sure belongs, but I'll include it, about being thanked. The family thanked me well. I said that. Money, words, the mother's weeping gratitude, the father's hard handshake that went on too long because he didn't have words and the handshake was carrying all of them. And here's the ugly thing in me I have to confess. I couldn't take it. Not wouldn't, couldn't. Every thanks landed on me like an accusation, because every thanks was for the corridor, the charge, the rescue, the bright 30 seconds, and not one of them knew about the gold afternoon months before when the child told me she was frightened and I gave her the fixture's line. They were thanking me for the 30 seconds and I was standing there guilty of the months. I couldn't say it. What was I going to do? Refuse a grieving mother's thanks by confessing I'd had a chance to prevent the whole thing and missed it? That would be making my guilt her problem, handing her one more weight. So I took the thanks I couldn't take and smiled the smile I didn't have, and every kind word drove the splinter deeper, and they all thought my flinching was modesty. It wasn't modesty. It was a man being praised for the one bright act while privately convicted of the long, dim failure underneath it, unable to correct the record without wounding the very people doing the thanking. Sometimes the kindest thing and the most corroding thing are the same thing, arriving together, and you just have to stand there and let it eat you and call it gratitude. The wiring. One more time, because it's the whole of what I was, and I want to set it down right before I stop. I've been hard on the wiring in places here, called it not brave, called it lucky, refused it moral credit. Let me be fair to it, since it's dead now and can't speak for itself. The wiring was the best thing about me. The ear to legs, the moving before thinking, the boy in the kennels already running toward the hurt pup. That was the one piece of me that was wholly good, that never calculated, never dozed, never gave a frightened child the fixture's line. The wiring would never have done that. The wiring, if it had been in charge that earlier afternoon instead of the relaxed 11-year fixture, would have heard the fear under the child's question and answered it. It was the rest of me that failed her in the gold light, the trained part, the relaxed part, the doctrine part that holds its ground and gives smooth answers. The wiring only ever did right. The one time it was let off its leash, in the corridor, it threaded the needle and got between and saved her. I spent my life keeping the wiring on a leash called doctrine and discipline and holding your post. And the one time it slipped the leash, it did the only unqualifiedly good thing I ever did. Maybe that's the real lesson, and I've been too proud to say it. The trained man failed the child and the wired animal saved her. And the truth about me is that the animal was always the better guard. And everything they trained into me was just a long apparatus for keeping the animal from doing its job until the one moment doctrine couldn't hold it back. I should have trusted the animal more and the doctrine less, my whole life. I trusted them backwards. The corridor was the one time I got the trust right, and it was an accident, the leash slipping, not a choice. If I'd chosen it, if I'd spent my life trusting the wiring, listening to the small fears, running toward the quiet hurts instead of holding my post against imaginary strangers at the gate, I might have been a guard worth the name. Instead, I was a fixture who got lucky once. The luck saved a child. It couldn't save the guard. Nothing was ever going to save the guard. The guard wasn't the one the wiring was for. The dream. It comes maybe once a month, and it's always the same and always wrong in the same way. In the dream, I'm at my post by the stair and the gold light is coming in and everything is the relaxed nothing. And I hear the sound, the small pressed sound, and I run. I'm running down the corridor and the corridor keeps getting longer. That's the wrongness. In the dream, the corridor stretches, the far door pulling away from me as I run, the way distance does in dreams, and I run and never arrive. And the sound goes on. The child making the sound the whole time I'm failing to reach her. And I wake with my legs already moving, the wiring firing in my sleep at a corridor that won't let me cross it. I've thought about what the dream is telling me, and I think it's this, that some part of me believes I didn't make it. That somewhere in some truer accounting than the one where the child lived, I'm still running. I never reached her. The corridor took too long. Because the months I didn't listen, those are a corridor I never crossed in time. I reached her in the bright 30 seconds and I failed to reach her across the long months, and the dream is the months, the uncrossable distance, the failure underneath the success made into a corridor that stretches forever. The waking truth is I got there. The dream truth is I didn't. Both are true. I got to the danger and I never got to the fear, and the dream keeps me running at the fear forever, down a gold corridor that won't end, with my legs moving in the bed and no one's child at the end of it to save. The other guards, I should say something about them, the men I served with, because they're in this too, even though they weren't in the corridor. There were others on the household. We worked watches, rotations. I wasn't the only fixture in those halls. And after, they treated me two ways, and both ways hurt. Some treated me like a hero, clapped my shoulder, wanted the story, wanted to stand near the man who'd done the thing every household guard half dreams of doing and mostly never does, proved the post mattered, proved the long boredom was a coiled readiness and not just boredom. To them, I was the vindication of the whole dull trade. And I couldn't give them that, because I knew it had been wiring and luck and not the dull readiness they wanted it to have been. But they needed it, so I let them have it. One more thing I couldn't say. And the others, the sharper ones, treated me a different way, careful, a little distant, the way you treat a man who's been somewhere you don't want to go. They'd seen the burned-out thing in me, recognized it, and some animal part of them stepped back from it the way you step back from a man with a fever you don't want to catch. As if the corridor were contagious, as if standing too near the man it happened to might make it happen to you. I understood that too. I'd have done the same. There's a kind of luck so heavy it looks like a curse, and men are right to be wary of standing in its shadow. I became, in the household, a thing that had been struck by rightness, struck by the corridor. And the struck are lonely, because everyone's glad it was you and not them and can't quite hide the gladness, and you can't blame them, and so you just carry the apartness on top of everything else. The mother. I keep her for near the end, because she's the hardest after the child. The princess's mother, I'll not name her either. The naming does no good. She changed after the corridor, the way I changed, the way everyone who touched that afternoon changed. She'd been a certain kind of mother before, the kind who trusts the house, trusts the walls, trusts that inside the palace her children are held safe by men like me and stone like these and the whole apparatus of the crown. The corridor took that from her. She learned what I learned, that the danger can be inside, at the end of a familiar hall, wearing a familiar harmless shape, and a mother who learns that never sleeps the same again. I gave her that. In saving her daughter, I also broke her trust in the very walls that were supposed to let her rest. She never said it. She was only ever grateful to me, openly, warmly. But I saw, under the gratitude, the new thing in her eyes, the not sleeping thing, the watching thing, and I knew I'd put it there, that the same act that saved the child cursed the mother with a vigilance she'd carry the rest of her life. There's no clean rescue. I keep learning it and learning it. Every rescue saves one person and wounds another, and the wound and the saving are the same motion. The mother paid for the daughter's life with her own peace, and I'm the one who handed her the bill, wrapped in the best news of her life. The cost? Because you asked in a way by reading this far. What did it cost? If you were right, if you saved her, where's the wound? The wound is that I was never the same guard after, and a guard who's never the same is no guard at all. The wiring that had served me 11 years, ear to legs, the trust in nothing, the relaxed vigilance, it burned out in that corridor. After, I couldn't trust nothing anymore. Every soft shape was a danger. Every dozing old woman, every familiar face, every part of the furniture I'd once filed under harmless became, to my burned mind, a threat building in the quiet. I couldn't stand a post without my heart going, without my hand drifting to the hilt at every cough and shuffle down a hall. I'd been made too aware of the thing I'd missed, and awareness, past a certain point, isn't vigilance anymore. It's just fear wearing vigilance's coat. A guard who suspects everything guards nothing. He's too busy drowning. They moved me off the children's corridors. Kindly, they framed it kindly, and then off the inner household, and then when it was clear the burning hadn't healed and wouldn't, I was let go with honor, with a pension, with the family's true gratitude, which I believe was true and which didn't help. The thing I was good at, the one gift I had, the ear wired to the legs, I spent it all in a single corridor, and there was none left after. You get one corridor like that, maybe. You spend the whole of yourself in it. And if you're lucky, and I was lucky, I was right. The child lived, you walk out of it hollow, having done the one thing your whole life was wiring you toward, with nothing left over to do anything else with. That's the cost, not death. Worse, in a way, for being survivable. I outlived my own usefulness by decades. I did the thing I was for, and then I had to keep being alive afterward, emptied, a kennelman whose ear no longer answers to his legs, sitting by a fire like a dozing old shape at the end of someone else's corridor, which is a thought I can't sit with for long. A piece about how long it took, because people always want to know how long, and the answer breaks the question. How long was the corridor? In paces, not long. A man can cross it in, I don't know, 15 seconds, 20 at a dead run. That's all. The whole of it, the sound and the running and the drawing and the getting between, the entire event that ended one life I was and started the hollow one I've been since, under half a minute. People hear that and something in their face falls because they wanted it to be a great long heroic stretch of time, a saga, and it was 20 seconds. 20 seconds decided everything. 20 seconds is the hinge. The whole rest of my life swings on. But that's the lie of measuring it in seconds, because the corridor wasn't 20 seconds. The corridor was 11 years of relaxed ear, and a gold afternoon months before when a child told me she was frightened, and a boyhood in the kennels wiring an ear to a pair of legs, and a mother's hand on a chest in the dark teaching me what guarding was. All of that was the corridor. All of it arrived in those 20 seconds and was spent in them. The 20 seconds were just where my whole life came due at once. You don't cross a corridor in 20 seconds. You cross it in everything you ever were, delivered all together to one gold hallway, and either it's enough or it isn't, and you don't get to know which until you're already running. Mine was enough. Barely. By wiring and luck and a slipped leash. 20 seconds that took my whole life to arrive and the whole rest of it to pay for. That's how long the corridor was. Don't ask me in seconds. Ask me in lives. It was one life long. It was mine. A piece I almost didn't write, about whether I'd do it again. People who hear the cost, the burning out, the drink, the unsleepable years sometimes ask, gently, whether I'd do it again, knowing, as if there were a version where I'd weigh it and choose my own wholeness over the corridor. And the question makes no sense to me. It's like asking whether I'd choose to have a different ear, a different mother, a different wiring. There was no choosing, I keep telling you. The wiring ran before the head could vote. I could not do it any more than I could not have a heartbeat. So the honest answer to would you do it again isn't yes, brave and noble. It's that there was never a me who could have done otherwise. The me that could have weighed it and chosen wholeness doesn't exist. The only me there is the one already running. So yes, I'd do it again, but not because I'm good, because I'm made the way I'm made. And the way I'm made ran toward the sound and would run toward it again, every time in every life, world without end. Because it's not a choice, it's a wiring, and you can no more regret your wiring than regret your own pulse. I saved her with the part of me that isn't even really me. That's older than me. That was in the kennels before I had a name. If that part is what saved her, then that part is the best of me and also the least mine. And I've made my peace with being a hollow man who happens to carry, in his oldest wiring, one good thing that ran true when it counted. That's the whole of what I am. A hollow man around a true wiring. It was enough for one corridor. It'll have to be enough for the grave. The last piece, where I'll leave it because a mind like mine doesn't get an ending, only a place to stop. Elise is grown now. I hear things a guard hears things even after he's not a guard. The household talks. The talk reaches me. She's grown and she's well as a person can be who carries what she carries. And she has, by every account, that thing her grandmother's frailty was only the mask of. She has a real strength, the kind that's been through the dark and come back knowing the shape of it. I'm told she's kind to the staff. I'm told she kneels down to talk to the children of the household, the laundry folks' children, the nobody children, the way someone once should have knelt for her. I'm told she does that. I don't know if it's true. It's the kind of true I need, so I distrust it the way I distrust the words in the corridor. But I've decided to keep this one too, the way I kept the look. A man my age with my mind gets to choose a few pieces to keep against the dark. I'm keeping the look she gave me, and I'm keeping that she kneels for the small ones now. Whether or not they're exactly true, they're true enough to live on, and living on is the whole task at this point. I never spoke to her again after the corridor. They moved me off, and then out, and there was never a moment, and what would I have said? I'm the man who didn't listen when you were frightened in the gold light, and then came down the corridor too fast with a blade, and got between you and the dark by luck and wiring more than by any goodness of mine, and have never once been sure since whether I heard you say please stop or only needed you to have said it. That's not a thing you say to a grown woman who's built a life over the top of that afternoon. You let her have the life. You keep your pieces to yourself by your own fire, and you write them down once like this, so they exist somewhere outside the 3 in the morning door, and then you let her be. I'll end on the sound because I started on the sound, and a fragmented mind at least owes you that small circle. The small pressed sound a child makes when she's trying not to make a sound. I heard it. Of everything I've doubted in this account, I've never doubted that I heard it, and that I was already moving before I heard the words, and that whatever I am hollow now, burned out, a poor witness to my own one good deed, I was, for the length of one corridor on one gold afternoon, the hand on the chest. The dark did not get past me. I don't remember deciding it. I only remember that it's true. Close the door, closed, that's where I stop. Not an ending, a place to stop. Halden Roe, formerly of the household guard, written once and not again. by a fire for no one against the dark.